the whip stitch. The whip stitch is a utilitarian stitch that can be used for putting in flat hems or for attaching trims, doing repairs, just about anything that you don't know how else to attach it on a costume, you can whip it on. So it is created with a single knotted thread. However, this stitch can be created with a double knotted thread if extra strength is required, if you're doing sort of a repair that needs some heavy duty attention. But I'll be demonstrating it with a single knotted thread. All right, prepare your sample with 2 folds, a narrow fold and a wider fold along one long edge. And go ahead and start by turning the sample so that it is perpendicular to your lap. This stitch is worked from away from yourself toward yourself. Okay, so I'll pick my sample up and start up here at the far edge. It creates an angled stitch that is visible on the inside of the garment with small pinpricks on the outside of the garment. To begin, insert your needle underneath the narrow fold, a small distance away from the edge, and pull that stitch up so that your knot is between the narrow fold and the single layer of fabric. Now, move your needle towards yourself and take a small stitch and put the needle under the fold. So we have a small stitch in the single layer of fabric, and then our needle is coming in from under the fold. Pull that stitch up. Repeat that process over and over again. If you would like to make it one operation, this one is fairly simple to do so with. So as you can see, we are just going to whip along this line, creating neat angled stitches. Don't make them too large, and certainly don't take up a stitch that is too deep in the single layer of fabric, for that will look untidy on the outside of the garment. You can vary the angle of the stitch by how deep you take your stitch into the folded edge. As you can see, there's a little variation in the size of my stitches. All right, so you want to work toward a uniformity, of course. But this is one of those stitches that sometimes you have to do in a hurry when you're doing a quick repair. So as long as the outside of the garment looks neat, that's the goal. And I will show you that in just a moment. This stitch goes along very quickly. So you see I did both operations there at once. In fact, that's the way I prefer to stitch. Do this stitch is right at the edge of the fold, and the angle of the thread is much shallower, but I feel like I can go pretty fast when I do it that way. So the angle here is deeper, and that's because I took a stitch farther into that fold. Now I'll turn it over and show you the back side. Here you can get a close-up look of the stitch there. Turn it over so you can see again that the stitches on the outside are very small. In fact, if I were using a thread to match, they would disappear, which is the goal. Now to tie off, again, I'm going to take my tiny little anchor stitch. This time I'm taking the stitch between both layers. Right, there's my anchor stitch. Now my tiny little stitch on top of that. Before I pull my thread all the way up, pass my needle through the loop, pull tight. There you have it. That is the whip stitch. Of course, trim your thread.